For Telesur, I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas, Venezuela. Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff kicked off her second round of the electoral campaign today. She will face off against right-wing candidate Aécio Neves. Rousseff participated in a mobilization meeting with governors and senators elected from her coalition. The electoral campaign will take to the airwaves again next Saturday when TV and radio advertisements begin again. Rousseff remains confident that Brazilians will vote for 4 more years of her government.
A luta continua. The struggle continues. And I want to repeat it again. The struggle continues. A fight that, without any doubt, will once again be successful.
The Department of Cochabamba is the region most benefited from many of the pro-coca legislation policies implemented under the administration of Bolivian President Evo Morales. He pushed forward legislation to decriminalize certain extensions of coca plantations and later achieved approval of United Nations in favor of the measure. We now go to our correspondent David Doherty, who is in Cochabamba, where Morales concluded his electoral campaign activities.
Bolivian presidential elections are just a few days away, and we're traveling throughout the country with Bolivia in Motion, where we're talking to a multitude of people to try and get a sense of how things are in pre-electoral Bolivia. We're currently in the Chapare region of the Cochabamba department. This is a tropical coca growing region where President Evo Morales first rose to prominence as a coca union leader. Most polls are currently giving President Evo Morales a strong lead of well over 40 percentage points in this Sunday's election. Reporting from Villa Tunari, I'm David Doherty, and this is Bolivia in Motion with Telesur.
And thanks to David, nearly 6 million Bolivians are registered to vote in this Sunday's general election. That accounts for about 60% of the population. According to polls, President Evo Morales will coast to a victory with nearly 60% of the vote. That's almost 40% more than his closest rival. That suggests Morales will win in the first round of voting. Along with the new president and vice president, Bolivians will choose 130 parliamentarians and 36 senators. The most important region for parliamentary seats will be the capital city of La Paz with 29 seats, followed by Santa Cruz province with 28 seats. While U.S.-backed organizations such as the World Bank have praised the major structural reforms pushed forward by Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto, leftist parties, students, teachers, farmers, and other worker unions have heavily criticized the new laws, calling them anti-popular. Many organizations have threatened with more protests against the reforms. Our correspondent Clayton Kahn is in Mexico with the latest.
The beginning of the work week here in Mexico City has seen various protests by national farm work organizations rejecting the so-called structural reforms proposed by President Enrique Peña Nieto that they say is an attempt to further privatize communal lands and restrict further state support. The farm workers from more than a dozen states say that specifically the energy reform in its secondary legislation, signed into law in August of this year, represents a form to legally dispossess farmers from their land for energy exploitation and mining concessions. In the hydrocarbons law, energy companies have the priority of utilizing protected farmlands for energy extraction, forcing farmers to cede control and ownership. There's also backdoor discussions that an agricultural reform is on the horizon. However, farm worker organizations say they have yet to be consulted by legislators on the content or intended benefits of the law that would be implemented.
And thanks to Clayton, a lightning strike has killed at least 11 people near the town of Huanchaca in the Sierra Nevada mountains of Colombia. Local authorities say they are treating about 19 other indigenous people for burn wounds after the lightning bolt hit during a religious ceremony. Between midnight on Sunday and early Monday morning, lightning struck more than 2,900 times, about 10 times per minute in the Sierra Nevada. The victims are part of the Wiwa indigenous group. In 2009, the people were listed by the Colombian Constitutional Court among the 36 endangered indigenous groups in the country. Tensions have spiked between the countries of Israel and Lebanon. The two nations are still technically at war over border disputes. Israel's army shelled the Lebanese side following a blast which wounded 2 Israeli soldiers. Israel is also in the news this week for its hostile settlement building project in Palestine. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu criticized the U.S. for its lack of support for Israel's plans to build a new neighborhood in East Jerusalem. White House spokesman Josh Earnest says the U.S. supports direct negotiation over the issue. Chaos and violence have engulfed the Syrian city of Kobani. U.S.-led airstrikes in the middle of the city prompted fighting street by street. Clashes between Syrian Kurds and ISIS militants have killed over 400 people in the 3-week battle for the city. That's according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. The death toll is likely to rise as no international organization has been able to enter the city to report on the crisis. Kurdish forces are struggling to push back the militants after they advanced in the town on Monday, claiming eastern neighborhoods. Since the offensive on the areas began, approximately 150,000 civilians, mainly Syrian Kurds, have fled across the border into Turkey. The U.S.-led strikes in the area over the past 2 weeks have failed to halt the militants' advance. At least 9 people have died in Turkey, where thousands of Kurdish protesters are demanding the government do more to protect Kobani. Police fired tear gas and water cannons to disperse protesters as they took to the streets, mainly in Turkey's predominantly Kurdish eastern and southeastern provinces. Clashes also broke out in Turkey's largest city of Istanbul and in the capital of Ankara. The Turkish parliament recently approved military incursions into Iraq and Syria to fight ISIS. Those forces have not yet been deployed. According to the latest figures from the U.S. government, military operations against the Islamic State militants in Iraq and Syria have cost over $1.1 billion. Despite the price tag, the campaign has not had much success in stopping ISIS advances in the region. Since mid-June, the U.S. and its 39 allies have carried out more than 340 airstrikes. Around 70% of those attacks took place in Iraq. The forces have fired over 185 warheads and 1,000 smart bombs. The U.S. Central Command says the airstrikes have largely targeted ISIS combat positions, training camps, and arms storage areas, and have destroyed or damaged more than 300 vehicles. Despite the stats, ISIS forces continue to claim victories. Today marks 13 years since the beginning of the U.S. war in Afghanistan. It's the longest-running military intervention in U.S. history, and it will continue. U.S. troops will remain in that country until at least 2024, according to a new agreement between Washington and Kabul. Recently, Washington leaders announced their latest plans in Afghanistan, which will shrink the number of troops there to 10,000. The war has cost U.S. taxpayers nearly $6 trillion. Every hour, taxpayers pay $10 million. Since 2001, nearly 2,400 U.S. soldiers have been killed in the operation. Nearly 1,700 have died since U.S. President Barack Obama took office. And on a much lighter note, we go to Thailand, where Thais and foreign visitors are celebrating the International Buffalo Festival in the coastal town of Chonburi, about an hour from the capital city of Bangkok. Thousands of locals and tourists are enjoying the event that has taken place for nearly 150 years. Festivities include a beauty pageant, but the most popular events are the buffalo races. The races have faced criticism from animal rights campaigners who say they are cruel. The local mayor has responded to those allegations.
If there is no racing, Thai buffalo will no longer exist because they wouldn't be used by their owners. But if we preserve them, we can use them for ploughing, trading, and also for racing. And the price will be high as people want to raise them.
More on those stories and others at our website, telesurtv.net/English. For Telesur English, I'm Cody Weddle. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.